Vienna, the bridge between the barbaric East and the civilized West. My name is Laser, and let's get to it. Settlements of people in and around Vienna are known all the way back to the Stone Age, but there was no major human establishment until the Iron Age, when the Celts created an oppidum on Leopoldsburg just north of today's Vienna city center. Since the Celts were the first that established themselves in and around today's Vienna, it is only natural that the name Vienna is of Celtic origin. Or is it? Vienna still today has multiple names in multiple languages, with some of them sounding the same like Vienna, Vienne, Wiedeń, and some being completely different like Dunaj, Bech, and therefore the etymology of the name, just as in the Bratislava video, differs depending on who you ask. Because I don't have time to tell you all the possible etymologies of the word, I'm going to go with the one that makes the most sense to me. The word Vienna is most likely derived from a Roman Latin name Vindobona, which in turn is most likely a Latinized version of a Celtic name meaning something like Vindo, bright or fair or white, Bona, village or settlement. This name could have referred to some sort of a Celtic fort, or could have symbolized the entire oppidum itself. So the Celts were doing their own thing until the Romans captured the area in 15 BCE, and in the 1st century established a military camp for the 10th Legion, forming the site of today's Vienna city center. As it usually went with the Roman military camps, a town grew up around it and was officially raised to the status of a city/town in the 3rd century. It was also during the Roman era that a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, died in Vienna in the 2nd century while trying to annex Moravia and Western Slovakia into the empire. After that, Vienna remained on the outskirts of the Roman Empire, making it very susceptible to raids and invasions, especially after the decline of Rome and the ensued migration period. With the political structure of the area gone as Rome fell, Vienna became sort of a crossroads for many barbaric tribes, from the Germanic to the Slavic, from the Huns to the Avars. All came and went, with Vienna enduring most likely due to trade on the valuable Danubian trade route between the Alps and the Carpathians. But perhaps one of the most important moments for Vienna came during the Hungarian invasion of Europe in the late 9th and early 10th century. During this time, the first mention of quote-unquote Vienna occurred, and the decisive win of Otto I against the invading Hungarians solidified and secured Vienna under the rule of not Slavic, not Hungarian, but German rule. Following the victory, the Margraviate of Austria was created in 976 and given to the Babenberg family for their loyalty to Otto I and Otto II. Vienna became the capital of the province in 1155, and a year later Austria was elevated to a duchy. The ruling family of Babenbergs promoted the buildup of Vienna as it continued to be an important point of commerce on the edge of the HRE and the Danubian trade route. At the end of the 12th century, during the end of the Third Crusade, Leopold V, and Duke of Austria, arrested the King of England, Richard the Lionheart, on some dubious accounts and demanded ransom. This came in the form of 50,000 silver marks, which helped build up Vienna even more, including its first mint and formidable medieval fortifications. In the 3rd century, Vienna received the HRE city rights, even though it technically already received city rights during the Roman period, and also was granted the rights of the staple port. This meant that any merchants traveling through Vienna had to offer their goods for sale in the city or face strict consequences. This made Vienna act as a middleman in many century European trades and brought lots of wealth into the city. However, in the 1246, when the last Babenberg Duke Frederick II died in battle, Austria with Vienna were left without a ruler. But no fear, because the Czechs are here to take over and promise to be super duper nice rulers. But of course we can't have Slavs ruling over Germans with their backwater technology and completely different culture. So a small count, Rudolf I, managed to get himself elected as the king of the HRE, and subsequently used his newfound power to take back the Austrian lands and establish himself as the first Habsburg ruler of Austria. But surprisingly, in Vienna it took a long time for the people to accept the Habsburgs as their new rulers, and partisan support for the Przemysl dynasty was strong going into the 14th century. The next century, Vienna continued to grow in Prague's shadow, but still expanding, including the foundation of the University of Vienna and the beginning construction of the Gothic nave for the St. Stephen's Cathedral. Going into the 15th and 16th century, Vienna started to emerge as one of the most important cities in Europe. It became the seat of a bishop and Habsburgs, now emperors. Sadly, it was also during this time that the Ottoman Turks were pushing into the Habsburg lands, laying siege to the Golden Apple on multiple occasions. However, in 1683, during what was to become the last Ottoman siege of Vienna, Austrian forces managed to defeat the Ottomans with the help of the Polish-Lithuanian Company. This Battle of Vienna was a major turning point in Ottoman conquest and the arguable start of the very slow downfall of the Ottoman Empire. With the Habsburg lands now being reclaimed, the 18th and 19th century are considered the golden age of Vienna. Many palaces and Baroque buildings were built all around the city, and Vienna enjoyed a large population growth.
But if you want to make fancy buildings, you're going to need money and some semblance of national stability, and by 1740, Austria was nearly fresh out of both. If you want to know how Austria held on tightly enough to enjoy such nice things, may I entice you with the life and times of Maria Theresa, Austria's most famous archduchess who didn't get her head lopped off. Back to you, sir.
After the end of her reign, the first factories in Vienna were built in Leopoldstadt. This increased construction in the city was also paralleled with the development of the Viennese sewer system, as Vienna was trying to avoid the mistakes of other major cities at the time. During the Napoleonic Wars, Vienna was captured by Napoleon on multiple occasions. However, this did not stop the Viennese expansion to greatness. After Napoleon's final defeat, the Congress of Vienna took place, but not very successfully, as nobles preferred to indulge themselves in lavish social events rather than figure out the future state for Europe. Nonetheless, Vienna continued to expand and modernize. The old moat and walls of the city were destroyed and replaced by the Ringstrasse. Monumental historicism buildings were constructed around the Ringstrasse, characterizing the architecture of Vienna to this day. Pipelines bringing fresh mountain water to Vienna were constructed, and the Danube started to be regulated due to its unexpected flooding. Going into the 20th century, Vienna enjoyed high prosperity. Its population grew to the record high of over 2 million residents, and the whole city was one of the leading centers for culture, arts, architecture, music, philosophy, science, etc. But the lavish lives of Austrian nobility couldn't last forever, and with the rising wave of nationalism across Europe, the inevitable World War I occurred. Expansion of Vienna ceased as all efforts were redirected towards the incapable Austro-Hungarian military. After World War I and the subsequent breakup of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Vienna ceased to exist as a leading European metropolitan city in many people's minds. Now the capital city of the Republic of Deutsch Österreich, urbanized, Vienna was very different compared to the very rural rest of Austria. This created many ideological divides, not just in Austria but in Vienna itself. Militias of left and right-wing parties were formed, and the ensued depression, followed by the bankruptcy of the largest Austrian bank, marked the way towards the Austrian Civil War. Vienna with Austria was very politically unstable until when, 1938, the Anschluss of Austria happened and Vienna became part of the Third Reich. Anti-Semitism was sadly well received in Vienna, and the many high-ranking historical Jewish families who lived in Vienna for centuries were stripped of their human rights, and most of them did not survive till the end of the World War II. Vienna itself was hated by Hitler, who wanted to build up Linz and turn Vienna into a backwatered city. But this did not happen as World War II came underway. During the war, Vienna was heavily bombed in the later half of the conflict, and many of its historical buildings had to be painstakingly rebuilt after the war. It was also after the war that Vienna, along with Austria, was divided between the Allies, just like Germany with Berlin. However, Austria managed to sign the Austrian State Treaty, declaring Austria ever neutral in foreign affairs, which also gave Austria with Vienna its independence from the Allied occupation. Chugging into the future, Vienna enjoyed a large economic boom with the rest of Western Europe, thanks in part due to the Marshall Plan. The Vienna Metro was constructed, and the third official seat of the United Nations in Vienna was constructed as well. Due to its neutrality, Vienna has about 17,000 diplomats living in the city, many assigned to international organizations. It is a city with a rich past and a stunning present. Vienna today has been in the forefront of numerous rankings, ranging from most livable cities to quality of living or happiness surveys. Vienna as a city is as old as the continent of Europe itself, a city on the cutting edge of European civilization throughout history, and the city which people like Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Strauss, Freud, and many more notable figures that I could be naming for days called home at some point. It is a city to rival them all, and most importantly, it is a city whose airport has free Wi-Fi. I hope you enjoyed the video. I put lots of work into it, and I recommend rewatching it as there are lots of comments/jokes all over the video, some subtle and some not so much. Also, please go look at my friend Jack Rackam's video about Maria Theresa. He's great at making videos about historical figures you never knew were interesting, and he definitely deserves to be checked out. Also, while you're there, please tell him his microphone is eating his arm, because I don't think he has noticed. If you want to see more videos like this, your subscription and or support on Patreon would be much appreciated. Till next time, Godspeed.